You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Angle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk. It's Friday, March 19th already. What an exciting weekend. Hope you'll tune into the show all weekend. We got some big news both here and on the TGI or the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. We'll be joining a Roku channel called Zodiac. So we're still working out the schedules. I do believe I'll be live Sunday morning on all the other outlets that we're normally on, YouTube, Facebook, both on TGI Sports Talk and Northeast Streaming Sports. But now we'll also be spending some time on Roku. And again, the Zodiac app is what you want to get. I believe it's free for now. So big news there. I'll be on later today, as you may or may not know. I should have announced I'll be co-hosting a weekly show with Dan Harris in the UK, across the pond. We'll be doing a show about New York sports. It'll be Let's Talk New York Sports. So if you look for Let's Talk Sports on Facebook or YouTube, you should find the information about that. I'm excited to do it. I've been doing it for a couple of weeks now. I've had a lot of fun with Dan. He's very, very knowledgeable about what's going on over here in our sports scene. I wish I could say the same about his. I want to thank my guests from last night. Actually, today, my guests will be Chuck Everson and Sonny Spera. We had to record the interview because they were doing their own show later on, which is called Big East Rewind. It's a podcast that they started recently. They're two former Big East players. Chuck played for the Villanova Wildcats, roughly from 82 to 86. He was part of one of the biggest upsets, if not the biggest upset in NCAA championship history when they beat Georgetown in 1985. And Sonny was part of the Syracuse Orangeman from 81 to 85, I guess. We had a great conversation last night, kind of all over the place, talking about their show, talking about their time in the old Big East. And we had a lot of fun. So hopefully you will check that out. I again want to thank my guest from last week, Butch Lee, as well, from the Marquette Warriors, another NCAA champion. We had a great conversation. He got in a little late, but we had a great time. And don't forget, March 31st, right here on TGI Sports Talk and the Northeast Streaming Sports Network, maybe on Zodiac, our Final Four preview show. We're going to have some great guests, some former NCAA champion players. We're going to have some columnists. We're going to have some special treats for you. So I'll be co-hosting that with Mac from the Mac and Jack Sports Show, and also Big Shaw from Northeast Streaming Sports. Good morning, Dave Guyette. And next week, before I get to the interview, next week my guest will be potentially finishing up our NCAA March Madness run. I'll have Gene Smith from the Georgetown Hoyas, another NCAA championship player. So without further ado, let's play last night's interview with Chuck Everson, former Villanova Wildcat, and Sonny Spera from Syracuse. Here we go.
Real room.
All right, everybody. As I had mentioned in my intro, my guests today are Chuck Everson, former Villanova Wildcat, member of the 1985 NCAA champions, and Sonny Spera, former Syracuse Orangeman. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
How are you, Keith? How you doing?
Hi, Keith. Doing great. Thanks for having us.
I'm great. I'm glad you guys could come in today. With the Big East tournament just finishing up, the NCAA tournament starting. I've focused the entire month on NCAA players, and I've had some Syracuse alumni on. You're my first Villanova guest, Chuck. So you have
right.
that. I had some.
You're getting to the bottom of the barrel at Syracuse. I get it. That's call Sonny for that one. I'm good. I'm in.
I've had some of your teammates on.
Yeah, you saw Red Bruin. You got some good guys in there. Yeah,
we had a lot of fun and
good people.
You guys have all got something to offer. So I want to start kind of in the present and go backwards with you guys. A little something different than that I do. You guys. And I happened across you because of a podcast that you guys have started, the Big East Rewind. How did that come about for you two guys? I know that you were rivals back in the day, and how did this evolve into a podcast today?
Well, Sonny was my host when I visited Syracuse back in 1980 something, and we got friendly, and thanks to Sonny's expert recruiting skills, I wound up playing at Villanova, and we've been friends ever since for 30 something years. Our daughters are the same age, so they got to play against each other a few times, and we'd bump into Sonny on the road and stuff like that. So we've been friends a long time, and we've gotten along this whole time, and then. We got involved with a podcast called the Hoya Locker Room with Gene Smith, and Billy Martin was on the show that I did. And I was the first guy not a Hoya to join them on their show.
Cool.
And I said, this was pretty cool. Let's see if we can do something. And the Villanova thing was taken by Jason Frazier, who does an outstanding job with Blue Blood on the main line. He's great. So I called Sonny immediately, and we talked about, hey, maybe we can do something with the Big East, and then it took off from there, right, son?
Absolutely, and the concept really is, the league was so competitive, right? Yet there's so many similarities in every program, and so many similarities we're finding amongst people, and the relationships, the coaches, and then across those. You're outside of the lines now, right? So it's okay to be friends, and there's just some great people, and there's relationships that people had prior, like Chuck and Ron Stewart. They're from basically the same town, right? Ronnie went to St. John's, right. Chuck went to Nova. Myself, Mike Sinicki went to Boston College. I mean, just there's relationships that you have, and now bringing it back, and now being able to. Peek inside or peek behind the curtain a little bit. And, nothing like actually talking to the Hoyas and having the curtain open.
That's been fun. Yeah, you talk about opening the curtain. Right.
Yes.
Like the whole world all of a sudden see it. It's amazing. And just great people, too. Great people.
You know what it is, Keith? It's the nostalgia. People like to talk about and hear about the nostalgic times of the Big East or of anything that they had in their life when they were younger. And we've enjoyed it so much. We've actually learned some things that we didn't know until we started talking to other people, and folks are calling me going, man, I didn't know that. That was great. Why didn't you ask this and do that? So it's been really cool. The feedback has been really fun. And we have two other guys that are with us, Daryl Gurney and Nick Corvus, and they run a Twitter account called Big East 24/7. And they come up with stuff on the Big East. That's unbelievable.
Off the charts.
Unbelievable.
Off the chart.
And we hooked up with them. And so they are kind of like the producer director of the whole thing. So they're the brains behind the whole show. Right?
We're the beauty. They're the brains.
Yeah.
Beauty.
The brains can't operate without the beauty.
Yeah,
we know
the air quotes. That's right.
Air quotes. This is a video one. This is one with air quotes. Beauty. Right? Not take it too serious.
Well, I've seen the first the few shows you guys have put up, and they've been really, really good. I actually happened across you because Tony Bruin had appeared on your show, I think, the day after he was on mine. It actually aired the same day. Right. So that's how I found you guys. And Chuck, you're right about the nostalgia. I mean, I started doing this show on a whim because of the pandemic, and I was bored out of my mind. And a friend of mine who had done some of this stuff talked me into doing a sports show that I didn't know anything about doing. And the reception has been amazing. I mean, I'm not going to be like, and you guys, maybe you guys might reach there because you've got a little notoriety that I don't have, but I'm not going to reach Joe Rogan numbers, right? But I post to some of whether it's basketball guys like you guys or baseball guys who played in the 70s. the reception to some of these groups on Facebook is just outstanding, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun for me. I can tell you that. I do this for fun. I'm not getting paid a lot. You guys might be getting paid a lot for your podcast, but
I think Sonny still owes me $5. That's probably all I've gotten paid.
Well, we'll circle back to that a little bit, but let's go back in time a little bit. So, Sonny, I don't want to age it. You're a little bit older than Chuck, right? A year.
1 year.
57.
I got both of you, so
Yeah.
61, and it feels like I feel like I'm 31 some days, but I feel like I'm 91 some other days. I don't know about you guys, but so when you go back, what was the recruit? I want to talk to both of you about the recruiting process and how you ended up where you ended up. Sonny at Syracuse, Chuck at Villanova.
Well, Chuck told you how he got to Villanova. He came to Syracuse.
That was easy.
And then that opened up Villanova. I mean, it's very simple.
Do you think that maybe Syracuse would have won the '85 championship if your recruiting prowess was better?
Well, Harold Jensen was another recruit I had. So, yep. And then Jay Billis was my last recruit I think I had. And I think Coach Bam finally said, "Damn,
stop talking."
Bayheim got smart after that and gave all the recruits.
I got cut off. I got cut off immediately.
Well, Sonny, how did you end up at Syracuse? What was the recruiting process like for you?
Well, for me, I mean, Syracuse is right up Route 81 from where I live and where I grew up. All right. So it's an hour and 15, 20 minutes up the street. And they had recruited my teammate, Sean Cairns. And they recruited Sean quite a bit because when you're 6'8", 6'9", right, you're in a smaller company. When you're a guard, there's a plethora of guards. So he was being recruited. They recruited him heavy. And they saw me play a fair amount my junior year playing with Sean. And this was before AAU. This was before exposure tournaments. Probably the biggest exposure I had was playing in the Empire State Games. And that's where Howie Garfinkel saw me play. But I didn't go to his camp. I didn't even know about the camp. I didn't know about 5-Star and, Kronhauser. I didn't know these things. I'm a little country hick, right, from Binghamton. So when they recruited Sean, they saw me play, and they expressed an interest. So they invited me to go to their summer camp. I went to the summer camp, and then they pursued me. And at that point, because I played in the Empire State Games and because I had, a favorable review from Howie Garfinkel, when you get the blessings of the Godfather, Howard, that opens up the door. So I got a bunch of other calls and letters, and then they started to come in. And the problem was what Mr. Garfinkel said was, he rated me whatever it was. And then he said, hey, Syracuse can get him with a phone call. So it was I was tabbed to go into Syracuse and I visited. I did my due diligence, but Syracuse just made sense. I liked their style of play. I was pretty good friend. I got pretty friendly with Bernie Fine. So I committed early. I signed on the first signing date in November because I just wanted to get it out of the way and then have my senior year. Sean went through the recruiting process all year long. And it's distracting. And our high school coach was a great coach, Hall of Famer. And he really saw the interruption in your season from all these people coming and, showing up at the games, and then the game is over and there's 7 coaches that want to talk to you. So he put on some stricter recruiting things at that time that Sean finished. And then the fellow that followed me was Mike Sinicki. He went to Boston College. So it was Syracuse, BC from our high school team. In addition to, we had a Syracuse football player, but that's where they saw me play. My story is pretty simple.
No other serious considerations for you outside of Syracuse, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I took visits. I went to Niagara. I went to Canisius. I visited UPenn. I had some interest from Providence, and I had some interest from Temple. Actually, Temple had made a home visit, and I remember them saying, "We practice at 5 a.m." And I said, thanks for coming. See you later.
That's right. Janie practiced real early.
I was like, yeah, that's great for somebody else. And Louisville had a connection to one of the kids on my team, so they recruited me a fair amount, but I didn't visit there, so to me that wasn't serious for me. So, yeah.
Cool. And you, Chuck, I mean, other than your, Sonny steering you away from Syracuse.
Yeah. Well,
how did it go for you? What drove you to Villanova, and were there any other serious contenders for your services?
I was getting recruited pretty heavily by all the Northeastern schools, from Maryland on up to Maine in that, pocket of schools. But I made 3 visits, but I went to Rutgers, Syracuse, and Villanova. But really, I'll give you 2 words on why I went where I went was Rolly Massimino. I wanted to play for that guy. And I used to go to his camp because, as Sonny alluded to, there was really no AAU, at least that we knew about. Right. So you have to go to the basketball camps, and there'd be coaches watching you play. So I went to this camp, and this fiery Italian guy was giving a speech about family and stuff, and I was really digging what he was saying. And I came home, and I think it was about 8th grade. I came home and told my dad, I want to play for that guy. He goes, well, you better get practicing because they're pretty good, so you better start working out. So I'd go to the camp the next couple of years, and they had like a help station at 7 in the morning, and that's back before anybody had cell phones with alarm clocks and smartphones and all this jazz. So you had to get up on your own. So you're exhausted from playing basketball literally for about 8 or 9 hours for the day. And then every 10 minutes I'm checking the clock. Is it time yet? Is it time yet? And I would get up and go to these things, and I'd be down there at these workouts that were run by some of the coaches at the camp. And he would come down with Mitch Bonaguro on a golf cart, and he'd always see me there. And sometimes it was just me and the coach. Sometimes it was me and another guy. Sometimes it was 10 guys, but it was always me. And so he grabbed my high school coach who was with us at the camp and said, hey, we need to talk to this kid. And that's how that happened.
And go ahead, Sonny.
I got to tell you the truth. I didn't steer Chuck away from Syracuse. What happened was when Chuck's family came up and they had their meal, I think Coach Boeheim saw us that we can't afford to keep Chuck.
Boeheim got frightened.
We can't feed him. I had Chuck signed. He was signed. I was a 7-footer. We're going to move Andre to power forward. Chuck's coming in playing the center, but no, it was a meal problem.
Listen, when the Eversons get out of the van, Sonny, and my dad's 6'8", my mom's 6 foot, my brother's 6'10", and my other brother's 7 foot, and me, we broke the budget for the whole season just in one lunch. So that's what happened. He didn't want to go broke. So.
I thought Sonny got sent to recruit you because Coach Boeheim wanted you to play guard. That's why Sonny was the guy.
No, trust me, I would have got him the ball.
Listen, he put us together because he thought we would get along, and Boeheim's a genius because we're still getting along 40 years later. So that's good.
That's a good connection.
That is a good connection for sure. So you guys get to your respective schools. And as mentioned, I had Tony Bruin and Eric Santafer on a few weeks ago. They were the original freshman class of the Big East, right? Mm-hmm. You guys came along right after that. I think, Sonny, you might have been the second year of the Big East. Or second year?
No. First year was 80, then Sean. Yeah. So there was Red and Eric, then there was Sean and Jeannie, and then there was myself and Andre Hawkins and Pete Wentz. So I was the third class,
right?
The third freshman class.
Well, I like, and you're behind that, Chuck. Yeah, I told those guys, and I'd like to get your take on this too. I mean, a lot of people, not wrongly, think that 1979 championship with Bird and Magic Johnson was the explosion of NCAA basketball and March Madness as we know it today. But I'll say, from my perspective, that the formation of the Big East had as much to do with the explosion of the NCAA basketball in general as that game did itself, because it just took the game in the East to a new level. Do you guys have any thoughts on that particular subject?
Well, I think so. I think so. I mean, if you take your major metropolitan, New York City, right, Boston, and just the sheer number of people that live in those metropolitans. Now you have St. John's. You have Seton Hall just outside. You have D.C., Baltimore, right? And you're bringing that whole thing into one league, and the talent that was coming out of those areas that used to leave the area.
Right.
Now you have Patrick Ewing, probably number 1 recruit in the country. He stays home, right? You have Chris Mullins. You have Ed Pinckney. You have Pearl. You have Derek. You have great players that now stay. And now all of a sudden the Big East is drawing from Detroit, from Midwest, from California. They're coming to play here. So to me, and it was a basketball conference. Make no mistake, it was formed to have great basketball.
For sure.
And if you look at the number of teams, everybody in the Big East has been in the Final Four. And now, I mean, how many NCAA championships? You got Syracuse, you got Georgetown, you got UConn, you got Nova. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think more so than the players was the brilliance of Dave Gavitt to put everything together the way he did. And, it's funny because Sonny and I, like, as we said, are learning a lot about some of the things that went on as we're doing the show. And Dave did a thing like Bill Raftery was on, and he was talking to us about, he didn't really get along famously with Coach Massimino. And so Dave paired them up in the golf tournament for the coaches and everybody. And, then it bloomed into a tremendous friendship that went right to the last days of Coach's life. But he would do that with the players. He would do that with, everybody to kind of get everybody to get along.
Yeah, athletic directors. Yeah.
He would promote, we had Gene Mangi on, the official, and, he's talking about, he wanted him to ref 2 games in one day because Gene was running around. So they did a lot of things behind the scene to foster the league, the big Mondays and there was a coup to get Madison Square Garden to have the tournament in. And that's when it really, really took off,
Yeah. And the NBA is a players' league, but NCAA has always been a coaches' league, in my opinion. I think a lot of people's opinion.
Look at the coaches. That's another point that I'm glad you brought that. I was going to piggyback that with Chuck. He talks about the players. Look at the coaches. I mean, just incredible, brilliant coaches.
Huge personalities too, which helps, right?
Yeah. Oh, that helps. Sure. That draw eyeballs to the set for sure. But I mean, just the fact these guys are teachers of the game. They're legendary, right? Massimino, Thompson, Carnesecca, Calhoun, Patino, Carlissimo, Behan. I mean,
you forgot Raftery,
right? Raftery, Evans. I mean, Gary Williams. Gary Williams won a national championship.
Yeah.
At Maryland. I mean, they're just geniuses. And it was funny to hear the officials both said that. They said when something happened big in the game, they didn't look at the players. The cameras went right to the sideline, the coaches. So they recognized that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were big time.
That was very smart production there for sure. Yeah, it's funny. You talked about Bill Raftery, and I watched that interview. It was really a great interview, by the way, guys. And he's a guy that I've been trying to find a contact to get him on my show, but I talk him up just in case he happens to see it, because I keep saying he's the best coach ever to come out of the Big East. Just trying to stroke his ego a little bit.
Yeah, you might torque a few other ones. Be careful.
I'm sure I will. Anyway, you guys played for, we talk about personalities, and I guess the coaches were fairly, at least from the outside, they're opposite ends of the personality perspective, right? But great coaches in their own right. And, Jim Boeheim gets his grief in some areas, and it's really, I think, and I know you're going to agree with me, Sonny, having played for him, that it's unwarranted, and what he's done at Syracuse has been amazing over the last, 50 years?
Oh, he's 45 years been the head coach.
Yeah, right. So
he's been there. He's been there as a player, as a graduate assistant, as an assistant, as a head coach. All his entire staff are Syracuse former players. He is loyal almost to a fault. He's loyal to the guys that play for him. He's loyal to his assistants. He's loyal to the community of Syracuse. I think if you ask Coach Bam, you had him on here, say, Coach, you can go anywhere in the world. Where would you want to go? He'd go, Syracuse. And that's just him. And the things that he hasn't held the school for ransom. I think he's grossly underpaid. He's absolutely underappreciated. There's no doubt about it. Some of the best fans are some of the toughest fans. And some of the things that I used to be on a lot of Syracuse, and it's hard to be a Syracuse person and to read some of the comments on that. Yeah. Now, with his son playing and you add him into the mix, they're just ruthless. And all he does, he just keeps winning. And the NCAA can take whatever they want to take away wins. He's got almost 1,100 wins. That should at least give him some respect and some rope, But I just think everybody, I got a better lineup, I got a better this. And his answer a lot of times is how many games you coached. I got 1,100 wins. And the conversation should be over.
Right.
But it's not.
Do you think his sometimes prickly personality gets in the way of
I got to be honest with you. I love it. I freaking love it.
I do too.
You ask him, like when they asked him about the NCAA, the ACC tournament playing at the Barclays Center, and he was like, "This is where it should be, not in Greensboro where nobody's watching." And I mean, he called a spade a spade. I mean, the guy, you ask him his opinion, he's going to give it to you. And you may not like the answer, but he's going to tell you what he thinks, and that's refreshing nowadays.
Absolutely.
I mean, he got in a little trouble this year with the reporter, and everybody's got on it because his comment was about the size. What he was saying was because nobody knew that this guy was criticizing him, telling him he'd have won more games if he played this lineup. And his answer was, how many games have you coached, right? And how many games have you won? And, you're not even a basketball player. So – I'm sorry. It got completely blown out of proportion. But what he was saying was, I coach. I've done well. I'm going with what I'm saying.
I agree. I like to look for some of the, outtakes, or not outtakes, but accumulations of Jim Boeheim's little press conference moments. There's some really good stuff.
Too fresh.
The problem, I guess, there is, I mean, does it get in the way of his the way he's portrayed as a great coach? Because obviously the press makes a difference in how you're portrayed in this world.
I think to a point. I think that's why they took those wins away from him. I think somebody at the NCAA has a personal thing, and probably, like if that reporter, for example, moves up into status, I think he's got a bone. He's going to try to get back at him some way that he can. There's no reason those wins should have been taken away from him. That was the biggest travesty, one of the biggest travesties I've ever seen. Yeah. But don't get me started on that. But honestly, I do. I think he does. I think sometimes if people are looking for that fight, or they're going to hold on to something, he's so competitive, and I'm sure Coach Mass, they're just so competitive in their nature that if you say something about him 3 years ago, and he now sees you, he's going to defend himself. He is absolutely going to defend. He's not going to sit there and let you take a shot at him, and he's not going to fire something back. So,
no, I think it is refreshing today, especially in this age of political correctness and whatnot. So, Chuck, let's move to Coach Massimino a little bit. Obviously, a bit different personality. You watch him on the sideline; he looked like he just came out of a I don't know what he looked like, with his shirt hanging out and his tie over his shoulder, and
right.
What
like he was just put on a spin cycle in the dryer. That's what he looked like.
Yeah, and a totally different relationship, at least from where I watched, with the press than Coach Boeheim. What was it like playing for Coach Massimino and that atmosphere?
Well, it was more than just about X's and O's with Coach Mass. He preached family, and he walked the walk and talked the talk, literally. We would, it wasn't uncommon to just show up at his house. He lived about a mile down the block from school, and we would show up. I literally would walk in, sit on the couch, and Mrs. Mass would come by. She goes, "Oh, hi, Chuck." I said, "Hey, Mom, how you doing? What's for dinner?" "Oh, what, I'm putting the pot on. You going to stay for dinner?" I said, "Absolutely. That'd be great. Thanks, Mom." It was like that, and listen, he was as fiery as they come. You wouldn't want to get on his bad side. And we all got on his bad side from time to time. And, but the one thing I liked about him in retrospect is he let us be kids too. So he gave us a chance to make mistakes, off the court. You know what I'm saying? So, and you paid for him, if you missed a curfew or if you missed an assignment or whatever, you paid for him. But he let us do things as a group. And he was all about being together all the time for meals, about being together, off the court. So he fostered the relationship that you had with your teammates. So, if I go out with a teammate, it might not be the same 2-3 guys each time we would do something. It would be one time it would be Presley and Wilbur and RC, and another time it would be Eddie, Gary, and Dwayne. So it was, it was like that with him.
Do you think, he didn't have the same tenure longevity-wise as Coach Boeheim or a lot of other coaches in the Big East and at Villanova. Do you think he regretted leaving Villanova when he did?
I think if he was alive today, I think he would say yes, because he was welcomed back with open arms when he came back a few years ago to play against Jay's Wildcats with his team from Northwood. and the place went wild, and we had a big celebration. We celebrated his 80th birthday and the 30th anniversary of our championship team, and everybody loved him. I think if he could have gotten a do-over, I think he might have done things a little differently with that regard, you know.
Yeah.
But hey, listen, you learn from things, and you can't play Monday morning quarterback. He thought he was doing what was best for his family at the time, and he wound up at UNLV, of course, and then Cleveland State, and then he wound up at Northwood. So he had a long career. He had over 800 wins, and he was 19 years, I think, at Villanova too. So it wasn't like he wasn't there for a short period of time. He was there for quite a while.
Should be in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely right.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Period.
One of the toughest things I've seen, Sonny, was Bill Raftery's son, Billy, did a nice piece on him called The Maestro. And they were there with the cameras when he got the phone call that he didn't get in. And you could see how his face just dropped. He just, he was looking for that. I mean, if you look at all the guys that coached back when we played, that whole slew of coaches that you named earlier, he's the only one that's not in there. And yet there are guys in there that, have had sketchy pasts with programs going on probation or things off the court that happened. There's never been anything like that in his record. So.
Well, I mean, the fact that he orchestrated, the biggest upset maybe in NCAA championship history has got to play into this a little bit. And I guess we'll segue to that a little bit. I mean, you guys there was a really good team. There was a lot of talent on that Villanova team, right, Chuck, with Ed Pickney and Harold Presley, Gary McLean, Dwayne McLean.
It was a talented team. I personally think my freshman year with those guys and John Pannone, Stuart Granger, and Michael Mulquin, I think that was our best team in my 4 years that we were there. But the 85 team was a very, very close-knit and still is a very close-knit group. And I think that helped us a lot during the big challenges like a Georgetown or a Dayton on their home floor and some of the teams that we played in the tournament. I think that helped us get us over the hump.
Yeah, there was an exciting tournament all the way through. I mean, 3 Big East teams make the Final Four that year, right? It was a tremendous year for the Big East. When you get to that game, Chuck, what's it like for you guys, confidence-wise, going in there? Are you thinking, honestly, we can knock this team off?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because 2 reasons. The first reason was that morning of the game, ESPN reran our game that we played at the Spectrum, I think went to overtime, and we lost by, I think, 5. And so we said, hey, we got close. And every year that I was at Villanova, we beat Georgetown once, at least once, So we hadn't beaten them at that point, and we much rather, to a man, everybody wanted to play Georgetown. We didn't want to play St. John's because St. John's, in my 4 years, I think I beat them I was on a team that beat them once or twice, So they seemed to have our number. We didn't do well with the lefties. Walter Berry gave us a tough time. Chris gives everybody a tough time. That's why he's a Hall of Famer. Sure. But you look at it and you say, man, do we want to play Georgetown or St. John's? And if you hooked us up to a lie detector, the whole team, everybody on the team would have told you Georgetown. Yeah,
it was certainly something to behold. Every once in a while, I'll come across that game, and I can't help but watch. It was amazing, the shooting performance from you guys that night, and it's a lot of fun. Sonny, you didn't have the opportunity to play in a Final Four, but you played on some really good Syracuse teams. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's the best team you played for in your 4 years there? And is there a team that you were surprised didn't go further than it did?
My junior year. Pearl was a freshman.
Yeah.
And we had, Raph, Andre, Wendell. I thought we were a strong team that year, and we just had a little mojo. Obviously, when you have Pearl on your team, you follow him, right? So his mojo carried us, and I think he just did things that nobody else did. So I thought that was a team that, unfortunately, we came up short. My senior year, we lost to Georgia Tech. I remember that. That was of course, it was in Atlanta. We might as well play them on Georgia Tech campus, but we lost in Atlanta.
Right.
And, Indiana beat North Carolina in the other game, and then Georgia Tech ended up beating Indiana to go out of that bracket. But I mean, the NCAA in and of itself is an event. You get charter flights, and just a specialness and the nature. I always wanted to travel to the West. I always wanted to put us in the Los Angeles bracket, put us in Texas. I'm in Syracuse and Binghamton my whole life. Get me out of here. Get me in some snow. Get me out of the snow. Put me in the sunshine, and it just Atlanta was the farthest we ever went. Maybe that's probably why it was so memorable, but we never got a chance to go, New Orleans or Houston or, Tallahassee or Miami. No. We're going to go to Hartford. We're going to go to, those places. We never got to go anywhere really nice.
I don't think I've ever seen a guy so excited to go Atlanta in my whole life. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I was excited. Let me tell you. I mean, I was like packing shorts and it was like 50 degrees. And I was like,
plus they have the greatest shoe store in the world in Atlanta.
That's right. That's right.
Friedman Shoes. Coach Mass took us there. And you walk in the first floor, Keith, and it looks like Little Sisters of the Poor. I'm like, what the heck are we doing here? It looks like they're giving these shoes away, And as you go up the flights, you get to the fifth floor, and that's where all the NBA guys would get their shoes. And guys like Dominique Wilkins would drop his paycheck down and walk out with 100 pairs of shoes. You know what I mean? If you wanted a pair for whatever reason, you'd want these. But a purple pair of ostrich skin shoes in size 20, they're on the rack. You can just take them off the rack and go. So it was.
I don't know how to live. I got 2 pairs of sneakers and 2 pairs of shoes, for crying out loud. I don't know how to do it 100 shoes.
Then you can count.
Chuck has a good point. They send the van to your hotel. They bring you to the place. You walk down the alley. You cut around the corner, and you're literally thinking, "Oh my God, where the hell are we?" Right. Then you go in the store, and then by the time you get there, these guys know who you are, and they're like, "Hey, I'm looking at a pair of shoes," and the guy's like, "Yeah, Magic Johnson just got those." Well, guess what? Sonny Spera's buying them. I don't give a shit what they look like. Right? That's how it works.
Yeah.
Listen, we talked about the Big East and how important it was to the evolution of the college game itself. And obviously, the Big East is not what the Big East was when you guys were there. It's still a good league. It's good that UConn came back this year. I think good for the league, good for UConn. But I mean, can it be what it was back in the day, or are those days gone?
I still think it's a great league, to be honest with you. I mean, look,
as good.
Well, back then it was a different style of play. It's hard to compare. But I like the league as it is now. Listen, we weren't going to have a league, it looked like, with all the football teams going away. So I think that the coaches and the personnel that put everything together, I think they did a great job with what they had. I wish that, and it's starting to happen, I wish that Georgetown and St. John's would get back to speed a little quicker, but they're both making great strides.
Yeah.
Patrick's got them playing at a high level now, and over there at St. John's, they had a great season.
I love what Mike Anderson is doing there. Myself.
He's awesome. I mean, so listen, I just think it's just going to take time. It's not, again, it's a new look. We still have teams going to the Final Four. We still have teams going into the tournament. The last couple of years, we had more teams. I think this year we have 5, right? And so I think the league is in good shape, and going forward, it's in good hands. I think there's from where I'm sitting, and Jay Wright does a nice job of keeping all of us in the loop of what goes on. So we usually get together once a year as a group. When I say a group, I mean the alumni, the basketball alums. So what he's been doing in this year of COVID that we had is he's been having Zoom calls, and we've had 100 basketball alumni on the call, and he's been filling us in on what kids are doing and how they're making out and what they have to do to survive through this COVID thing as a team, and little bits about the Big East and what's going on with the league. He does a great job of keeping us all in the loop.
Yeah, and Villanova staying at such a high level has certainly helped the league's overall standing. I think they won multiple championships in the last 5 or 6 years, right? So great, Sonny. You've got a different perspective because obviously Syracuse was part of that old Big East and left for the ACC for football reasons more than
money
reasons, right?
Just money.
Yeah.
It's all about the Benjamins, right?
Yeah. I mean, do you think that, well, knowing Coach Boeheim, I mean, if he had his druthers, would he be back in the Big East today?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Nobody wants to see none of the basketball people wanted to see the Big East dissolve or morph. Okay. Because what happened was, and what's been happening in a lot of conferences, they just absolutely pilfered teams from other conferences. Yeah. And, I mean, Creighton in the Big East.
Yeah.
Geographically, really? So, but Creighton's a good program. Let's bring them in. I get what they're doing, and football became the downfall of the Big East basketball conference for Syracuse, for Pittsburgh, for Boston College, for, part of that core that left. As a purist, I was not all excited about leaving I hated it. Okay. You could get fans at Syracuse when we play Providence, when Syracuse plays Seton Hall. People are going to come because of the history, the rivalry. Syracuse plays Clemson. Nobody's coming. Okay. Syracuse plays, Virginia Tech. Nobody's really coming. I mean, now there's a little juice with Syracuse and Duke, right? And maybe a little bit with Virginia or North Carolina. And there's great teams in the ACC. Don't get me wrong. It's not a knock on that. But I'm old school, and I liked what we had, and I did not like the transition. I 1,000% understand it. And it was a lack of leadership in the Big East on the football side. They did not tell teams financially what was happening with the TV contract. But the ACC said, our TV contract for football is going to bring you this. So you have this. What if we stay in the Big East? We have no idea what we have, but it's going to be less. It was a no-brainer financially. It was a no-brainer to leave on the dollar side. On the emotional side, it sucked. And I was not happy about it.
Is it still financially? I mean, I know there's a lot of money involved, but I mean, the football teams that have gone have struggled mightily since they left the Big East as well. Syracuse hasn't done that well. Pittsburgh hasn't done that well. Who else? Even Miami hasn't done that well, for crying out loud. I mean, they haven't. It has been a boon for them successfully as far as play. Is it still financially worth it?
Financially, yeah, it's a no-brainer. I mean, ACC Network and Clemson has been in the final game for how long? Final Four, right? That brings money back to the conference. Yeah, that money comes to the conference, and that's shared by whatever percent of whatever happens, right? And that's just the financial realities of it, right? So, and the money is in football. The money is in football, and you're right. We have not had the same success on the football field as we had in the basketball arena. No question about it. We've had our moments. We had a really good year a couple of years ago, but honestly, it's really about the TV revenue.
Yeah.
That's where it comes down to.
And being, in the same basic age bracket as you guys, but not having played, obviously, but being a fan, I was never a fan of this whole realignment that they did with these super conferences. And you mentioned, Creighton and Marquette coming to play in the East, and West Virginia is out playing in the Big 12, and it just geographically it makes no sense. And rivalry, historic rivalry, from that perspective, it makes no sense. It destroyed a lot of historical rivalries.
And it also adds to the travel. I mean, you got to remember, to me, these are students still. These are students. When you travel, you miss time. Now they travel typically charters. They're in, they're out. When we flew the 5:30 business flight. We got in, checked in, had rented cars, went to the hotel, and then we left on another, commercial flight, not a charter flight. So if you played on a Tuesday, you were missing school Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, right? And now they don't really care what there's so much money driven in the NCAA. They don't care what your class schedule is. So now we're going to take kids from Philadelphia and we're going to fly them to Creighton and vice versa. It has no regards to the student athlete. It has regards to.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Anything you'd add to that, Chuck?
It's a sad reality.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, listen, we would play Syracuse back in the day when Sonny and I were playing, and we would always stay that night because we would take the 5:30 red eye out of there, and get back to Philadelphia. And if you had an 8 o'clock class, coach would show up and knock on the door and just making sure Everson's in class. I'm here, So it depends on where you went to school. I mean, they've got tutors with them, and now a lot of stuff's done online, and there's ways to get your grades in. Believe me, the guys. I can only speak for the Nova guys. Their team cum is almost a 4. It's like a 3, 6, or 7. It's something off the charts. So the flights and everything like that don't bother those guys much, but. I understand Sonny's point. He's not wrong, but they find workarounds to make sure that the grades are getting done. That's why they're there,
Yeah, and it's helped flying on the charters because you're out, you get right on the plane and go, and then come right home after the game. Yeah. But look at what it does. So you're going 5:30. You're going to fly out, so that means you're getting up at 4 because you have to go through a check-in. So if you had to do that today. You got to get to the airport hour and a half early. You got to get there 4:30 in the dark, and then you played a game. So I guarantee you didn't get any sleep, right? Because you're wound up. Your adrenaline's pumping. Whether you were a star or not, you just don't sleep well. Now you fly. You got to get back. Now you got to perform in the class. It's hard. It is hard. It's a challenge, and you just can't take away what the impact is. And with the online factor, that's been a blessing, I'm sure, for a lot of kids. Because they could be in class probably on the airplane.
I'm sure they're in class in Indianapolis this week.
No doubt about it. There's no way you couldn't.
It's a good point. Well, along with the way we talked about how the Big East has changed from the time you guys played till today. The game has changed and recruiting's changed, obviously. I think one of the reasons that Villanova stayed as successful as they have is the one and done thing worked for a while for Kentucky and some other teams. And I personally think that wave has kind of passed. And one of the reasons Jay stayed as successful is he didn't really recruit those kids, right, Chuck? And unless I'm missing somebody.
No, he kind of went second tier, if the top 10 or 20, we were just kind of underneath that. And listen, he sold them on all of the values that he learned from Coach Massimino. Like, he took all of those things and polished them up and made them his own and took them to a whole nother level. So when he recruits a kid, and just from what I know from behind the curtain, he not only recruits the kid, he recruits the parents, he recruits the high school coach, he recruits the kid's friends, he recruits his AAU coaches, and anybody else that's around him. They all have to buy into the culture that we have at Villanova. And if one or two of them don't, you can't play here because you're never going to make it. You have to be all in. And, and Jay has been very, very successful at getting really, really good kids that turned out to be really, really good basketball players because we have a staff that works with these guys from morning to night, from the strength conditioning coach, John Shackleton, right through Mike Nardi and Kyle Neptune and George Halkovich. All the guys do their part, and everybody plays a role in getting these guys. And Shaq, the strength coach, he's the nutrition guy too. So Jay knows exactly what goes into these guys. Not like us. I mean, listen, we had cans of soda in the locker room. That's how crazy we were. I mean, that's what we had back then. That's what after practice, I'm chugging, orange soda or grape soda, and they're not allowed to touch a soda or anything like it. Jay knows exactly what they're eating, and that makes a big, huge difference.
I think having veterans, that's what led to some of his tournament successes. Those teams get better as seasons go on, and they get better as their career goes on, and they're always competitive in March, right? So
yeah, they have different things to help them recover too, Keith. Like, we didn't have, Sonny and I didn't have the luxury of those boots that squeeze your legs and, get all the bad blood out and get the fresh oxygenated blood in there to heal up things. And, I see videos and things of Chris Jenkins is laying on a bed with these two boots on, watching game film on an iPad, of the game that they just played, and he's recovering. I'm like, what the heck, and we didn't take, ice baths on the road and stuff. They have special stuff that travels with them for all these different things. And I tell you one more. I mean, the other thing was, and this probably would affect Sonny and I a lot. I mean, you get yelled at in practice. Hey, you're dogging at Everson. Hey, Spera, come on, pick it up. Let's go, whatever, right? These guys, they wear heart monitors, and they know exactly how hard you're working, So they can go to you and say, hey, Sonny, listen, you're running at 70%, my friend. You're not going to play. Get it up. Get it up.
Why does he keep using your name as an example, Sonny? I don't.
Well, you know me a long time.
You know them. Sonny makes the best pasta. That's why, because I want to eat. That's the whole.
It's an Italian thing. I do have to say one thing to his point. What Jay does and what Nova does and what a lot of big programs. If you get a bad kid, if you get a kid who's got trouble, it can really set your program back in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
not necessarily wins and losses, but different sanctions or whatever. So you really have to make sure that you're recruiting quality kids, quality students, and then putting them in a culture for them to succeed. And I applaud Villanova. I think they're phenomenal at it. I think Syracuse is pretty good at it as well, because they're always getting mocked, that we don't get the 5 stars. We're not getting this recruit, but you know what? We're still winning 1,100 games. So
Sonny, you look at what Patrick did this year, right? To me, based on what you're saying, it's even more incredible that he's having the year that they're having there at Georgetown, because last year there was an incident. I don't even know what happened, but it wasn't good, and he lost 4 kids.
Yeah.
And then Mac was probably his best kid. He comes back, he tries out. He's going to maybe feel out the NBA. He says, you know what? I'm going to go play at Texas Tech or wherever he went left, So now you're sitting there. Pat had, I think, 7 eligible kids last year. And you're going, oh, God, now they're going to take a step backwards. And they're picked last this year. And then look what happened, because he's got quality kids. He's got good kids. And he's got a culture that he's building brick by brick. I take my hat off to the guy.
Yeah, his team this year reminds me a little of some of Coach Boeheim's teams recently. Sonny, they haven't had the big, star recruits, but they seem to get better as seasons go on, and they're dangerous come tournament time almost every year.
Let me tell you, if you're a big kid and you're not thinking of going to Georgetown with Louis Orr and Patrick Ewing on the sideline,
you
ain't gonna get better coaching than that.
It's funny though.
It's weird to see Louis Orr on the Georgetown.
They don't know what accomplishments that Patrick had, the kids that are being recruited, but they know Coach Ewing. Maybe if they Wikipedia him and they look up what he did, but for the most part, like if you were a kid in the 90s or early 2000s, and you could still say, oh man, that's Patrick Ewing, the iconic Nick, the Georgetown Hoya, okay. But like these guys, it was funny because, I'll give you the kid going there from my high school next year is named Jordan Riley, like we talked about earlier, Sonny. And I said to his mom, I said, tell Coach Ewing I said hello. She goes, oh, you know him? I said, yeah, we know him. It was, so they don't even really know.
Did you go like this, Chuck? Did you show him that?
No,
he took it off? Oh, he had the ring on earlier.
Right off of Patrick.
He had the ring on earlier. He took it off. I wanted to see it.
Sonny, I was asking you, does it seem weird to see Louis Orr over there on the Georgetown bench with Patrick Ewing?
Almost threw up. No, just kidding. No, it was a big deal. And, the Syracuse faithful and all of us, players obviously was like, oh, my God, you're Benedict Arnold. We're never going to be able to talk to Lewis. We got to take down your number from the jerseys. We got to take it down from the rafter. But in all honesty, no. It goes to me, Patrick, I think, recognized, okay, I'm a pro coach. I'm going to college. And he needed someone with that college experience who had been a head coach successfully at Seton Hall, Tulane, multiple places.
Siena, right here where I am.
Yeah, Siena. It was a no-brainer. And Lewis is salt of the earth, the best guy. And Patrick, from what I don't know Patrick, but from what I understand, very similar. That's a perfect get together. The only thing they need is a point guard, but that's a good, solid front court, right? But that is really I think a tremendous part of their success. So everybody wishes Lewis, success. And when he comes back to Syracuse, we're going to bust his ass a little bit. That's just just what's going to happen.
So we talked about, you guys, we've talked about players, we've talked about coaches. When you guys got through with your college careers, were there aspirations? I know, Chuck, you were drafted by the Jazz.
Yeah.
Did you think that you had a realistic chance of playing in the league? Or did you want to play in the league or even going to coaching or anything like that?
Everybody wants to play in the league. That's the dream that you have since you're a little kid, but it was really, I had no idea that nobody had called me and let me know. And I was at my future wife's aunt's house and the phone rang and they said, hey, the Jazz picked you. I go, what? I couldn't believe it, because the funny thing was my mom, her maiden name was Larson, and her classmate, and is right next to her in the yearbook, is Frank Layden. And Frank Layden was the president and coach of the team, and he's the guy that drafted me. So it was kind of funny that we went there and went through rookie camp there, and every day got the honor of playing against Karl Malone and trying to stop him. And Thurl Bailey came every day, and Mark Eaton. So, we're running drills, and I'm in the middle of the paint, and they're flashing to the ball. And Jerry Sloan is throwing the ball into the post, and my job is he'll call Carl or Thurl, and now you got to check them and do that. Try to do that every day with those three guys. It wasn't easy. So it was a great experience, though. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
And I know that not to take away from Chuck's student athlete experience, you had to have been a good student athlete, Sonny, because obviously you've gone on to be a fairly well-known dentist, what do we call it? A dentist seems like not enough, but
Keith, you're not an anti-dentite, are you, Keith? Because
they're taking a lot of my money.
Hang up right now if that's the case.
Don't tell me you're with Watley. Don't tell me you're along with Watley. We're gonna have a problem.
You must have obviously been a real student athlete. Not that Chuck wasn't, and some of the other people I've talked to weren't. I mean, obviously, to get where you've gotten to today. Did you have aspirations to do anything outside of where you ended up?
Well, like Chuck said, honestly, when you go to college, one of your thoughts, I was a 6'5" point guard. So I was like, I can be a pro, didn't work out. That's okay. I was drafted professionally for baseball twice, and
by who?
Milwaukee Brewers. I didn't sign, because when you sign a contract with a pro baseball team, you give up your scholarship, not your eligibility. So they weren't going to pay me that much. So I figured, you know what? Basketball, I'm going to get my education, and then, that's going to put me in dental school. And that was my plan. So, I followed that, and I was very fortunate. And I continued as a graduate assistant coaching at Buffalo. Coach Boeheim, I think, gave me a good recommendation. And they hired me as a graduate assistant. I was there for 4 years when Buffalo went from D3 to D2, and that was fun. And I've been coaching ever since. But and it's funny because people like, you're a dentist and you type basketball. Well, I think they go hand in hand, and nobody agrees with me. But even Tim Watley doesn't like it. But too bad. I'm a dentist and it works.
That's good. Well, listen, before we go,
yep.
Guys, schools are both in the big dance here. How are we going to do? I talked to Chuck a little bit off air, but so I'll start with you, Sonny. I think Syracuse is going to win a couple games here myself, but
so do I. I think they're tough because their preparation for a game is different than most other teams. When they're playing that zone and that matchup, they don't have as complicated a scout. Most teams typically offensively run a couple of different sets against it. And Boeheim is a master at changing at halftime. And I think it takes a little bit off of your body physically when you're not covering one guy running through 8,000 screens, you're matching up. So I think that helps us. And I think in these kind of tournaments, just like in the ACC tournament, I thought we had Virginia. I think it's a benefit to play the style that we play. And I think on any given night, we can beat anybody because of our style. So I think that helps us. We got to get by San Diego State, but I always like our chances.
There's some really good matchups. Chuck, I know we talked off the air, so talk to us a little bit about Villanova and what you see for them in the tournament.
Well, if you are a bracketologist like myself, Keith, and know a little bit about how the brackets work.
I only called Sonny a dentist. And now
I don't even play the brackets anymore. I'm so bad at picking games. But we're in that dreaded 5-12 game, so anything can happen in that game. And everybody, including our boy Jay Billis, is saying, "Oh, Winthrop's going to beat Villanova at a 12-5 game." I don't know. I mean, listen. It depends on, everybody is working hard. The guys, it was a next man up mentality. Unfortunately, Colin Gillespie blew out his MCL, which fortunately for him, it wasn't the ACL, it was the MCL. So he'll be fine for whatever he's going to do next year. And then Justin Moore, first game in, getting ready for the spotlight, he rolls his ankle real bad. It was a pretty bad sprain from what I understand. So I don't know if he's going to be ready or not. And if he is going to be ready, is he going to be at full speed? But we got Ryan Archidiakono's brother, Chris, who's playing his fanny off, and Antoine, he's really playing hard too. And they're doing the best they can with what they have right now. So we'll see. I mean, I like our chances against Winthrop, and then we'll see what happens from there. You got to go one at a time. It's like that old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we got to go one game at a time and see how we do.
I can't believe you use that. I got a sales guy that works for me that he uses that on every sales call, and it makes me cringe every time I hear him say it. Probably because I hear him say it so often, but it is true. It is a true statement. So listen, guys, I appreciate you coming on with me tonight. I wish you a lot of luck with Big East Rewind. You guys have lined up some great guests so far. You've done a great job, and I will continue to watch. I will continue to talk about your show when I see some that I like. So keep up the good work. I appreciate you being with me today, and I hope we can talk to you guys again as we go forward at some point.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks
for coming. So, guys, my interview with Chuck Everson, former NCAA champion with Villanova. See you later, Dave Guyette. Brett Cloutier knows who I was talking about. Jim, if you see this, I apologize. I want to thank Chuck and Sonny for their time today. We had a great, I think, hour to chat. I'd love to have them back on. Check out their podcast, Big East Rewind. It's on YouTube. They're doing a great job. Continue to join us here on TGI Sports Talk, Northeast Streaming Sports Network. You can find us there. You can find us on YouTube on, again, TGI Sports Talk or Northeast Streaming Sports, where there's lots of shows. And we also have a new Roku outlet. We'll be on the Zodiac app, which I believe is free, at least for now. And catch me on Let's Talk New York Sports with Dan Harris from the UK. We're having fun with that. My guest next week, Gene Smith, former Georgetown Hoya, 1984 NCAA champions, as we continue our march through the March Madness. We'll see you then. I'll see you Sunday at 9 a.m., and I'm liable to be on Roku Sunday morning, 9 a.m. live. We'll talk about the NCAA tournament. We're going to talk about NFL free agency. The Patriots winning huge, all in. A lot of moves around the league. Lots to talk about. Have a great weekend. Keith Engel, TGI Sports Talk, in the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. See you soon.